You know, lately, that opening line from A Tale of Two Cities keeps coming to my mind. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It seems like an appropriate analog to the nation these days after a century of the creeping specter of government and the institutional segregation that it has created. The persistent lies about the effectiveness of the welfare state may, however, finally be catching up with the left. As a result, we could be seeing the very beginning of a seismic shift in our politics, one that brings both danger and opportunity. Let me explain. A recent poll by the Associated Press showed support for President Biden collapsing with the black community. Only 41% want him to run for re-election, while only 55% said that they would be likely to support him next November. Contrast that with a 90% approval rating just 2 years ago. If Biden runs, and I still say if, expect the activist core of the left to act like a cornered animal. We saw it in 2020. Violence, rage, riot, murder, destruction, all cheered on for political gain. Remember fiery but mostly peaceful? Even a swing of a few points in support or turnout for the Democrat presidential candidate among the black community could be enough to ensure Republicans recapture the White House and the Senate majority. George Soros, Mark Zuckerberg, the Marxists behind BLM, and the funders of Antifa, or whatever they're going to call themselves this election cycle, will stop at nothing to prevent that from happening. That's the danger. But while the left schemes, Republicans have an extraordinary opportunity to finally create and deliver an agenda specifically tailored for America's black community, marginalized by the Democrat socialists' failed welfare culture. Republicans love to talk about how they are the party of ideas, but they consistently fail to show up and make the sell to the black community. Arguably, Trump perhaps came as close as anyone has come in recent memory to doing that. Now, while the left is likely figuring out how to have a replay of 2020's chaos and division, Republicans could be carrying into minority communities a message of change that speaks directly to their needs. Republicans have a chance to directly counter the claims of systemic racism and white supremacy that have become just the latest justifications for the lack of progress with key performance indicators, despite trillions spent on welfare programs. On housing, some 2/3 of housing and HUD assistance goes to minorities, including 45% to blacks. And all the big brains in the conservative think tank community, they should be able to come up with a plan to help these majority female-led households obtain housing that isn't an insult to their humanity and that of their kids. Public schools have long been failing the black community for decades, regardless of how much money Randi Weingarten squeezes from politicians to throw at her members. School choice is proven. It is wildly popular among minority communities. It produces better outcomes at lower costs, and Republicans should intensify their support for these efforts and totally ditch the one-size-fits-all public education paradigm and work with urban community leaders to craft programs tailored to the needs of local populations to ensure academic attainment. On health care, our public and safety net hospitals should be among the best in the nation, not the worst. Republicans should be supporting additional federal and state direct grants for these institutions, and very vocally. The GOP could also specifically address chronic conditions that impact the black patient population, like diabetes, asthma, and heart disease. The idea that work requirements for welfare are extreme, as President Biden says, is as demeaning to blacks as saying that they're just too unsophisticated to have voter identification. The Republicans could bring federal and state tax incentives for companies to advance urban job creation, training, and vocational programs. On immigration, Democrats want to resettle illegals into black communities in Chicago and other cities. The black community is already protesting against that. Republicans could speak directly to those neighborhoods about how illegal immigration hurts opportunities for economic independence. On drugs, gangs, and crime, it is indisputable that a more conservative approach can save more black lives in the inner city than what the far left offers. Now, of course, none of these is going to rebuild the black family or the churches that have been intentionally decimated by the poverty pimps and the leftists who sought to replace those pillars of the community with the state. But the moral and political imperative means opening wide the door to these voters. If Democrats go nuclear, and if history is any guide, they will, we'll have another summer of rage driven by their professional activists and the media. Republicans, for their part, can either look aloof and sound outraged, or they can help the black community and others in need discover the real America they've long been promised, but have been intentionally kept from finding.